So I've just had the biggest movie surprise I've had in some time. That surprise is Captain America: Brave New World, the 35th movie in the MCU, if you could believe it. The premise of this film is basically Thaddeus Ross, played by the incredible Harrison Ford, replacing the late William Hurt, RIP to William Hurt, is elected president, and then Sam Wilson, Captain America, finds himself in the middle of an international incident and needs to work to stop the masterminds behind it all. My expectations were the floor. I was not really excited for this movie, especially after all the reports of the reshoots coming out, that they reshot this movie, 3-4 times. They added people like Giancarlo Esposito last minute. Script went through a bunch of changes, so many things in post-production, a giant budget of like over $300-400 million because of marketing. There's also some reports of certain story beats that had to deal with, things in the Middle East or certain characters. I'm not quite sure about all of it. It was, at one point, there was so much news about this movie in a negative light that it was almost easier to ignore it. So I went to the screening. I was very lucky to go. And I sat down and I was like, okay, I just hope I'm entertained. I just hope this is a worthy sequel to the spirit of Captain America in the MCU. And I hope that it's Anthony Mackie's vehicle. I hope this is the moment where he shows us he is the guy. I have no idea what the hell they did to fix this movie, what they cooked in that lab, what they had to do to make this thing a watchable, serviceable movie, but they did it and then some. Sitting here genuinely shocked telling you how much I enjoyed this freaking movie. It's a damn good MCU movie. It gives me everything I've ever loved about the MCU. And it really does put it into this movie. Now, yes, there are some flaws that we'll get into, but the action is incredible. The story, it's tight. It's focused on these central characters. It's really grounded. It moves well. Yes, you could see some script changes and things that were reshot, but for the most part, the movie moves really well. There's genuine tension throughout, and there's real emotional stakes that, aside from everything else, I really did not expect. Right from the jump, this movie gets going and it never really slows down. I would not really say there was ever a pacing issue. I think there was always something happening that was keeping my engagement and the audience with me. There was some solid audience reaction in this thing as well. The thing I love the most about this movie is how much it feels like a Captain America movie. This film really captures the essence and the spirit of what Captain America is, especially in the context of the MCU, both when it was Steve Rogers and now what the world of the MCU looks like with Sam Wilson. Spent some nice time really laying some groundwork, showing you his relationship with members of the military, other members of his team, his relationship with the government, and still what the symbol of Captain America means to this country as a whole. And what I also really appreciated, which I have a feeling people won't like this, I think this will be a big deterrent for some people, is the movie does try to play with both sides politically, kind of with Sam and Thaddeus Ross being on different sides, and yet there's this invisible string, if you will, connecting them and having to be able to work together for the greater good. It's not necessarily that clean, and it doesn't go really deep. It is pretty surface level. However, when you look at a character like Captain America, when you look at a character like Thaddeus Ross, and how the world, we have to remember, the world of the MCU is not necessarily the world we live in this country today. So I think for the context of both of these characters and the way that relationship, let's be honest, the relationship of Thaddeus Ross has been around since the beginning of the MCU, but also the relationship with the Captain America character has been going on for a long time, especially look at that conflict going back to Civil War. So I think it worked for the context of the story they're trying to tell. While we're on the topic of these two characters, because Anthony Mackie and Harrison Ford really are this movie, let's talk about Anthony Mackie first. Was never really a fan of him as the Falcon. I felt like it was a character that was just kind of there. And I didn't love Falcon and Winter Soldier the way other people did. I thought it was a really kind of flawed journey to him becoming Captain America, and then he really never fully is Captain America outside of the finale. I think I wanted a lot more from it. I am here today to tell you that not only is Sam Wilson Captain America, I cannot wait to see him lead the Avengers. And that is because Anthony Mackie in this movie is that guy. He proves he can lead the movie. This is probably his best acting performance, not just as the character, I think as a whole. He owns this movie. He's a true leader. And yes, I'll say it again, Sam Wilson is Captain America. He honors the mantle passing from Chris Evans incredibly well. And then we have Harrison Ford, Red Hulk, Thaddeus Ross, incredible. Incredible. I really didn't know what I was going to get out of Harrison Ford in this movie. I'm surprised how much they do with his character, the places they bring his character, the emotional stakes and emotional depth they attempt to give him, and they really do call back to William Hurt's incredible work as the character earlier on and really make this character feel as lived in as the MCU. It feels like this is a character who's going back to, the Incredible Hulk days. This is a character who's been in the MCU for a long, long time. And while it is a different actor, they are giving him some phenomenal material in here. Something else that was really surprising is how much this movie feels like a spiritual successor to the Incredible Hulk movie from 2009. I mean, this movie really honors and gives credibility to a film that is often disregarded by MCU fans, forgotten by MCU fans, and is pretty underrated in my opinion. This movie calls back to and tries to progress so much from that movie. And I really appreciated that. That brings me to the visuals. When he's Red Hulk, he looks incredible. I don't even know if Ruffalo ever looked this good as the Hulk. I mean that he looks incredible, and the build to him becoming the Red Hulk is so well done. It's so tense, and I think it's so well earned. Action was cool. Not all of it was perfect. I think visually this movie was impressive in some places. In other places, not so much. You can tell moments where they reshot. You could tell they were in front of screens, or maybe the actors weren't in the same places. But I will tell you, for some of the bigger fight scenes, they are some of the cooler ones in recent memory. They are pretty cool. They are pretty innovative. Sam's wings, the shield, the costume, it all works. Danny Ramirez's Falcon, the Red Hulk stuff, the other hand-to-hand combat stuff. You'll definitely have some of your Winter Soldier vibes in there. It really was well done to me. I was genuinely entertained by it all. I didn't feel like anything overtly looked awful or anything took me out or anything felt too fluffy. I was genuinely on the edge of my seat for some of the action sequences. I mean, what can I say? Before I get to some more of my critiques, I do want to shout out some other members of the cast. I thought Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres was really, really fun in this movie. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to walk out of this movie with him being a standout. A lot of people in my screening were, so I can't wait to see what the general public does. Just a really fun, eager character with a lot of charisma. Great chemistry with Anthony Mackie. Also, Carl Lumbly's Isaiah Bradley. I thought he was the standout of Falcon and Winter Soldier. He's very, very good in this movie, and his character, it's really smart, immediately injects some emotional fuel into the story early on, especially in terms of his relationship with Sam Wilson, and that becomes the driving force for a lot of what happens. And of course, you got Giancarlo Esposito doing his thing. I just think he's always good at doing this thing, and to where every time he pops up, I know what I'm going to get, and I enjoy what I get. So shout out to Giancarlo Esposito as Sidewinder of the Servant Society. He was fun. He was fun. I can't lie to you. And then Shira Haas, I hope I'm saying her name right. She's playing a character called Ruth, and she's a former Black Widow. She's an agent. She's working with the president. Has some cool action sequences. Is kind of like a side character in this whole investigation thing. I thought she was pretty solid as well. So I woke up and I realized I forgot to talk about the leader, played by Tim Blake Nelson, in my review. So I'll talk about him right now. Really solid performance, decent villain, bit secondary, bit underwhelming, I'll say overall, especially if you're a fan of the character from the comics. What I will say is I think it worked for the doses in which they used the character. I think the purpose of the character ended up working really well, but this movie really comes down to Mackie and Ford, with the leader being a decent antagonist. I do think for some people he will be forgettable, and if you're a really big fan of the leader from the comics, you might be disappointed here, but for me, it was okay. Of course, this is a spoiler-free review, but I am going to say this. I am going to close with this. There's a moment in this movie, I'll just say it, there's a cameo in this movie. There's a surprise, if you will, and I'm so excited to see how people are going to react to it, because I genuinely think, this is not hyperbole, I genuinely think it is one of the most fulfilling cameos the MCU has ever done. It is entirely appropriate for this story. It is incredibly necessary for the story, in my opinion, and it fires you up going into the third act so incredibly well that it's something that I didn't know I wanted or needed, and when it happened, I was like, that was perfect. So for a movie that I was not excited for, went in with pretty low expectations, a pretty negative narrative around it. So for a movie that I had really low expectations for, the narrative around it was pretty negative and I wasn't necessarily that excited. I was incredibly fired up. I was incredibly floored by this movie. I was entertained. The cast, primarily Mackie, Ramirez, and Ford, are outstanding. The action's cool, and I think it gives you all the things you love about the MCU. I'm giving this movie a very, very strong 7.5 out of 10. Cannot wait for your thoughts. If you had a chance to see the movie or if you're seeing it later this week/weekend, please let me know your thoughts in the comments and tell me what your excitement level is for the future of the MCU. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to hang out with all of you again very soon.